Well, today's charts today comes to you from a very noisy energy conference in Germany.
So that was yesterday, and Charts Today is coming to you a little bit later today. It's just after midday because I flew back from Germany this morning and I'm back home. And I was actually on the LSEG London Stock Exchange stand, and there in the paper I picked up this FT in the lounge in Düsseldorf Airport because there's this activist investor, and that's been, the stock exchange price has been falling. And the interesting thing is I work quite a bit with LSEG. I do their academies, their technical analysis academies. We're compatible. We've got a lot of mutual clients. We're up there running on LSEG, and and the system I use is LSEG Workspace, which was Reuters or the Refinitiv system, which the stock exchange bought, I think, for around 22 billion. And so the London Stock Exchange is effectively more a technology company. Most of their revenue is derived from sales of data and services. So they have been tarred with the software brush. A lot of software companies, if you look at Sage and Relx and a lot of these companies, and in the US, a lot of software companies, Adobe, all been falling over the past year, really. And this activist investor's come in and said, they're too cheap and, looking to shake them up. The interesting thing is if you look at the 60-minute chart, we can see here that was the reaction yesterday, but so far, we're not really seeing, any big change. But that's a stock in the news, and it was fortuitous that I was on the London Stock Exchange stand at this energy conference for the last 2 days. But anyway, I'm back at my desk, and it's good to be home, and so we can look at what's going on in the charts. So looking at the dollar index, first of all, this is the daily chart. Remember, this is medium term. That's always flagged in your system as medium term. We are just waiting to see whether we make a lower low. And, the interesting thing is, if we look at some of the stronger currencies recently, if we look at certainly the Japanese yen, because they've had strength coming there, that's testing to see whether we're going to make, remembering this is dollar buys more yen, so this is yen strength, dollar weakness when we come down here. So that's getting close. And that's a big constituent in the dollar index. And if we look at some of the other stronger currencies recently, Swiss franc is another one where we are quite close to that level as well. And South African rand is another one that's been particularly strong lately, and you'll notice the targets that are there. So that one's getting quite close. And the one that is actually breaking is the Aussie dollar. So again, this is quoted the other way around. So this is Australian dollar strength, US dollar weakness, and we are making a new high here on the Aussie dollar. So Aussie dollar is climbing. I've got most of my investments are in Australian gold shares, so I'm quite pleased to see that happening as well. But the key thing is there that we are seeing the strength in currencies. Now, Bitcoin is holding steady, but the reality is we're just waiting to see for that lower low. The question I'm asked is, what's my next target for Bitcoin? And I say, well, hold on a minute, 54,600. That's where that target is. We haven't got there yet, but what we need is a recovery to a high point, and then generating a new thrust off that high point will generate a new downside target. We can go to the 60-minute chart, of course, but that is the real key. So Bitcoin is just, we're waiting to see, but it's hardly a bullish chart. We're bearish below the cloud there. We saw strong employment numbers out in the US yesterday, which surprised the market. We saw bond yields just pulling back a little bit, but on the whole, we are still above the cloud there on the daily, and most other bond markets are steady as well. We're seeing stock markets with a sort of mixed reaction. This now means that people are pricing in fewer interest rate cuts by the Fed because of strength in the US economy. And so we are still struggling to make new highs there. The future's up about 1/3% on the US market, but the NASDAQ really struggling there, showing how technology companies are really drawing that down. Now, just another one is gold. Just taking a quick look at the situation with gold. We see here that we've got this recovery. We didn't activate the downside target, but we don't yet have a new upside target on the daily. We look at the 60-minute chart, we can see the targets here much more clearly. We are back above the cloud, but we are really struggling at this 5100 level. It's potentially an ascending triangle building, so that's looking a bit stronger. And if we look at silver, I've said before, it's a little bit less clear. We are just wandering sideways, waiting for a break. So not an immediate bounce back. And platinum was another one that had good upside targets on the daily. That looks less positive. It's just sinking away. But of course, most of these metals will move in lockstep. And here's the daily on platinum. Those targets been reached. So then just another few things to look at before we look at some of the UK stocks. Sugar. This one I've been looking at for a client that I've been working with and trained their trading team, breaking the $14 level. This is New York Sugar, breaking to new lows, downside targets, no big surprises there. And the 60-minute, those targets pretty quickly met, and even the 10-minute chart has been displaying quite key things. Looking at the energy mix, of course, we analyze this for clients every day, and we did put out our report this morning. Carbon down 6.5%. That target was given at 85. We've gone to 72. You just can't ignore these downside targets. We're now below the cloud. That is bad news. That is potentially a new downtrend building there. Crude oil, just struggling to get back above that 70 level on Brent crude. So that's been a really key factor. We have got upside targets there on the daily chart. If we look at the 60-minute chart, that's also just showing upside targets, but that's a really clear thing here as well. So the key point there is that we are seeing strength to the upside, but we are struggling at that $70 mark. We got above it very briefly yesterday, but just couldn't hold it. So coming back to UK stocks, looking at the FTSE 100 list, and the first thing I do when I look at the UK market is any market actually, is I just rank the leaders. And here we see Schroders, and this is a really interesting one. They've been bid for today. There was an upside target, but you can see we've just jumped from like 460 to 600, sort of like a 25% premium. We're up 28%, and so that's really just leapt. Would you have been able to see that? Well, maybe in the shorter term charts. Interestingly here, mid-January we had this jump up. Did someone know something? There's a buying thrust there that generated a target to 557. That was given back at 451. So quite interestingly that's where we've gone to today. But that is an anomaly, and let's face it, you would have been lucky to catch it. But looking at some of the other stocks that are up, Melton Energy is a fairly newcomer to the market, so we don't have a lot of history. Legal & General, we're probably seeing some stocks going up in sympathy with Schroders, breaking to new highs here. So we had that upside target, but again, that's looking pretty positive. That's the medium term. You go to the short term, and you can see it's a little bit more mixed, but that's Legal & General. Banking, we see Lloyds Bank up 1.8%. Really interesting that this has been a really quite strong performer going over the last year, just nicely trending up with upside targets being generated all the way up. So you really do need to watch the targets. You can't ignore them. Anyway, that's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. Bye for now.